2022 will be a very busy year for spaceflight because NASA's heavy lift rocket may finally fly mid-year after a long delay, and SpaceX plans a test flight of its Starship in orbit during 2022. Hello everyone, welcome to Elon Musk Trending. In today's video, we are going to talk about all the juicy details regarding Starship finally launches its Super Heavy to orbit, so stay tuned till the very end. Now let's carry on the video. SpaceX is stronger than ever as it approaches its 20th anniversary of its founding in 2002. The California-based company has built its strengths in a range of sectors, including broadband communication and human launch vehicles. The constant push of SpaceX to fly back to space and eventually to Mars is part of popular culture, especially thanks to its founder, Elon Musk, who makes predictions and musings almost every day on Twitter, though the company has not flown in recent months. During the current work week, the Starbase is busy preparing Booster 4 and Ship 20 for their upcoming orbital test flights and accelerating launch cadence for the following vehicles. Currently, most of the attention is focused on the orbital launch site, specifically the tank farm and the Mechazilla enhancements to the launch tower. At the same time, Ship 20 is beginning its first round of testing on the suborbital pad concerning the orbital test, which is scheduled for November. However, the paperwork side of approvals needs to be cleared before the test can take place. During the FAA's recent announcement of a draft programmatic environmental assessment, which solicited public comments ahead of Booster 4 and Ship 20's first flight into orbit, certain requirements need to be met before the two rockets can take off. As part of a routine cryogenic test, SpaceX filled the Starship container with several hundred tons of liquid nitrogen to simulate its explosive propellant and tested the first orbital-class Starship, known as Ship 20. While anyone can return to the test pad and take pictures, or Elon Musk can comment on the results on Twitter before drawing any conclusions, it appears that Ship 20's first cryo-proof was largely successful, given that Musk confirmed the success of the test. However, compared to more than a dozen previous Starship booster and test tank cryo-proofs SpaceX has conducted over the last 2 years, it will still be a challenge to observe the initial test of Ship 20 via unofficial webcams, without any direct insight from SpaceX or Elon on the test goals or timing. Cryo-proofs were historically visually original and almost impossible to predict. As well as the interpretation of why certain things appear the way they do and what's going on at any given time is like trying to decode eroded hieroglyphs. It's relatively simple to conduct cryogenic tanking tests, whether using super heavy Starship or test tanks with liquid oxygen methane propellant or neutral liquid nitrogen. Cryogenic fluids are partially or fully loaded into the vehicle, connected to the pad systems, and the vehicle's powered up. Following the achievement of the desired test objective, the vehicle is then drained or detanged of propellant, or LN2, since these are extremely cold negative 180 degrees Celsius or negative 260 degrees Fahrenheit Starship tanks containing them are quickly chilled due to a lack of insulation. That supercooled steel stops the moisture vapor in the South Texas air from condensing, resulting in layers of frost and ice, usually following the level of cryogenic liquids inside the Starship tanks. The cryogenic liquids are brought into contact with white-hot plumbing and tanks of the Starship which are ambient temperature by comparison. With this, even a small amount of gaseous chemical boil-off can quickly lead to unmanageable pressure within the Starship's fixed tanks. In addition, gaseous chemicals are less dense than their liquid counterparts, and like all rockets, the Starship occasionally vents gas to maintain the right tank pressures. In other words, interpreting hieroglyphics involves the use of cryoproof tests frost levels, and venting cryoproofing the Starship S20s is unusual compared to earlier prototypes. The most important fact is that SpaceX began loading liquid nitrogen into the rocket at 8 o'clock. Over the next hour, the LOX and CH4 tanks were filled about 30 to 50% of their full capacities, in addition to partially emptying the methane tank and filling the LOX tank. SpaceX left the LOX tank close to its maximum capacity for more than 2 hours, occasionally topping it off with fresh liquid nitrogen. Later, 4 after the Starship began loading LN2, several massive vents were performed as the Starship's tanks were drained of liquid. These were most certainly detank vents, causing depressurization of the tanks while they were being tested. These vents were accompanied by the rapid loading of several hundred tons of LN2, which might have been topping off the S20. SpaceX could have begun the pressure testing process for Ship 20's cryoproof around that time, presumably by closing the vents of the rocket and allowing the pressure to build up perhaps to flight levels, if they were of sufficient height Elon Musk said he intended the Starship prototypes to operate at, 6 bar or 90 psi, many months ago when the company was deep in the process of cryoproofing. As a result, Starship was able to successfully test above 115 psi or 8 bar, given an overall 30 safety margin for Ship 20 to survive its orbital launch debut and orbital velocity re-entry attempt. It's likely to need it to hit those tank pressures more than any other Starship prototype. The cryoproofing of the Starship S20, which was completed on September 29th and 30th, marked another milestone in the development of cryogenic technology, as it became the first heat-shielded ship to pass a cryoproof test. The shattered tiles of the 15,000-tile heat shield are impossible to determine from the public webcams, which show no indication of damage. And a frequent cycle of cooling and warming caused starships to contract and expand, falling off as a result. Shift 20's steel tank skin probably would have frosted and iced over if it had been exposed to the air, but heat shields seem to have controlled that temperature change. Several tiles have been bumped together or chipped and cracked in ways too subtle to be seen in NASA's spaceflight webcasts or Lab Padre recordings. However, it'll be possible to confirm or deny that once the streets are open again and local photographers have the opportunity to capture high-resolution images of the Starship. As it stands, the first cryoproofer Ship 20 has been highly successful, hopefully leading to the installation of raptors and static fire tests soon. The prototype spacecraft has 6 engines, 3 of which are vacuum-optimized Raptors. With a large nozzle specifically designed for space travel in the Super Heavy Booster 4, 29 Raptor engines with atmospheric flight capabilities will be used. Moreover, tests for Booster 4 will be conducted separately as part of the first test-proof tests, followed by static fire tests. A rocket with 29 Raptor engines will be launched by the company for the first time, as they are a pioneer in the aerospace industry. SpaceX is the company that designed and manufactured these engines. The Raptor engine is fueled by methane and liquid oxygen, also known as methalox, instead of rocket-grade kerosene as in typical rocket engines. Around 185 tons of thrust can be generated by each Raptor engine. Previously, Musk stated that they planned to increase Raptor engine thrusts from 185 to 230 tons. Once operational, the Super Heavy rocket is expected to become the world's most powerful launch vehicle. SpaceX's reusable architecture, based on its partially reusable Falcon 9 rocket, will reduce each flight's cost in its first orbital test flight. SpaceX will test the rocket's launch and re-entry capabilities, but not its complicated landing and recovery systems, as it said in a filing with the FCC in early 2021. Then, on SpaceX's first orbital mission, the Starship will re-enter the atmosphere after one orbit around the Earth and land at sea near Hawaii. That's it for today's video. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel, and also comment below your thoughts. See you in the next video.